According to my clock, it's 9 o'clock. Should we start the meeting?
Yes.
All righty. Before the meeting starts, we have some housekeeping details to pay attention to. And thank you for joining the Washtenaw County Board of Road Commissioners for our May 5th virtual working session. Before we start the session, there are a few housekeeping items I would like to cover. Speaking, by the way, is Doug Fuller. I am sitting as chair today. Number one, if you would like to make public comments during the meeting, we will prompt you at the appropriate time in the agenda to virtually raise your hand. If you are viewing the meeting on your computer, first make sure to click Join Audio. You can then raise your hand by clicking the Participants button at the bottom of your screen and then the Raise Hand button at the bottom right of your screen. If you dialed into our meeting this morning from your touch-tone phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 on your phone. And once we get to the public comment section on the agenda, we will unmute participants with raised hands one at a time. Number two, the chat feature on this Zoom meeting is available only as technical support for users on their computers or smartphones. If you are experiencing technical issues with audio or video during the meeting, submit a comment in the chat feature and our systems administrator will help you troubleshoot the problem. Number three, the audio and video of this meeting is being recorded. A link to the video will be posted to the WCRoads.org website in the coming days. Number four, today's meeting is posted on WCRoads.org and there is a link available in the chat if you are joining us from your computer. Number five, the agenda calls for a closed session for discussion of right-of-way acquisition. When we get to that point in the agenda, the host will make an announcement of that fact. And now the meeting will be called to order. And roll call for attendance, currently speaking, is Doug Fuller. Barb Fuller, Vice Chair, are you there?
Present.
Member Commissioner Green.
I'm here.
Thank you. Managing Director Cheryl Siddell.
Here.
County Highway Engineer Matt Macdonell.
Here.
Director of Operations Jim Harmon.
Present.
Director of Finance and IT Dan Ackerman.
Here.
Wonderful. You seem to all be here. Public comment. Now we come to the item of public comment. If you would like to make a public comment, please virtually raise your hand now. If you're viewing the meeting on your computer, first make sure to click Join Audio. You can then raise your hand by clicking the Participants button at the bottom of your screen and then push the Raised Hand button at the bottom right of your screen. Again, if you dialed into the meeting from a touch-tone phone, you can raise your hand by dialing *9. The meeting host, Emily, will unmute participants with raised hands one at a time. The host will announce your username or last four digits of your phone number when it is your turn to speak. As with all of our meetings, while this is a time to receive comments from the public, this is not intended to be a period for dialogue. Each person will be allocated 3 minutes to address the board. Emily, do we have such people that would like to address us this morning?
Doesn't look like it. It doesn't look like we do.
Okay. Thank you. In which case, we'll close public comment and move on to Cheryl. You want to start the North Territorial Pontiac Road intersection design conversation?
Sure. I will introduce the topic, which is The intersection of North Territorial and Pontiac Trail is one that we've talked about quite a few times with respect to a design and specifically a roundabout design. I will quickly hand it over to Matt Macdonell to lead the discussion on sort of the options that we've looked at, where we're at today, and what our recommendation is going to be for this board moving forward. So with that, I'd be happy to hand it over to Matt.
Good morning.
Hey, Matt.
Looking to the board this morning to inform you of where we're at in the process of designing a fix for the North Territorial and Pontiac Trail intersection. We have this project programmed with federal funds in the 2021 fiscal year. The federal funds identify projects by fiscal year, and the fiscal year is generally from October 1 to October 1. So MDOT's a little different than our calendar year budget year. It is in the TIP. So the TIP is a planning function. It's a transportation improvement project list that essentially identifies where our federal funds are going to go for the next 4 years. So we got started on this project, and the board approved a preliminary engineering consulting purchase order for Fishbeck. Fishbeck has been working towards designing a solution, a roundabout, as Cheryl stated. The existing intersection is a four-way stop, so it's a fairly safe intersection. We've talked about these over the course of the last several years. We're working towards solving our congestion issues at four-way stops, and it's both our primary roads. Most recently, we have worked out a roundabout solution for the Pontiac Trail and 7 Mile intersection just to the north. Similar situation where we have two primary roads coming together as a four-way stop, and we see congestion during the PM and AM peak periods when folks are traveling. Similarly, we have the same issue at Pontiac Trail and North Territorial. So we thought to look at a roundabout solution. We programmed a dollar amount similar to the dollar amount we had for Pontiac Trail and 7 as we were budgeting for the future TIP year. And quickly, as we look to develop concept, we recognize that certainly every intersection has their challenges. This particular intersection has a skew to it. So basically, Emily, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and share your screen showing the roundabout option that we have come up with. And that way we can kind of look at the geometry of the intersection. And these PDFs, I hope you both all received the email I sent out that with basically these same PDFs that we are sharing on Emily's screen. You should have received as well. And what we are showing here, you can see the roundabout solution, and it's offset from the existing intersection. So on the screen, left and right, you have North Territorial. North is at the top of your screen, and Pontiac Trail runs essentially northeast and southwest. And it's over a 60-degree angle skew. So it's quite skewed. And that is an issue for several reasons. Skewed intersections are difficult for turning movements for particularly commercial vehicles. Trucks have a difficult time turning without going into oncoming traffic or going off the road to accommodate their trailer to make that turn. So certainly addressing a long-term solution that includes the ability for commercial traffic to use the intersection is one of the goals, with these two roadways being primary roadways. Also, from a safety standpoint, again, a four-way stop is a very safe intersection because speeds slow down and come to a complete stop and make a decision on which path they're going to take, and certainly taking turns to get through the intersection. All that takes time. So then comes the congestion issue. So in solving the congestion, we certainly don't want to sacrifice safety. And that's where the roundabout solution is a very good solution, because it keeps the speeds of the roadway down considerably as opposed to a traffic signal solution. And we've done this again at several intersections, Pontiac Trail and 7, just to the north, and also during this construction season, we'll be building a roundabout for a similar reason at Miller Road and Wagner Road. But again, getting back to the skew of the intersection, it became a complicating factor in that the skew, we went through several iterations of where the roundabout should be located, what size of the roundabout, and then also we have to take in consideration what exists currently at the corners of the intersection. So we have businesses on both the northwest and northeast corners. One is a gas station convenience store that no longer does fueling, but it was a gas station at one time. So that's in the northwest corner. I believe it's called Edith's Market. And then we have a business on the northeast corner that was a flower shop, a coffee shop. It's been several things over the years. And so it's a business on the northeast corner. We do have a little more room as far as right-of-way goes. And Emily, if you wouldn't mind putting your cursor kind of in the northeast area, you can see a line there. Yep, exactly. That's our existing right-of-way. So you can see we've got a little more space, room to operate for intersection improvements on the northeast corner. And then to the southeast, we have several homes and businesses that exist today that have access to the east of the intersection via a private road and or driveways. And then the southwest corner is kind of a triangle parcel that is currently vacant. So that's kind of the lay of the land. And as we were trying to design an appropriate roundabout, we quickly discovered we would need to address the skew to accommodate turning movements and to safely get everyone through the intersection by slowing them down. To address the skew of the intersection, we had to deviate from the existing Pontiac Trail alignment by quite a bit. So what that does is certainly increases our footprint. It increases the size of the roundabout slightly, and would have significant right-of-way impacts. So that's kind of the summary of the roundabout option. And I'm going to go through and show you also, we looked at a traffic signal and kind of compare the two. So with the roundabout, we'll go to the next page of the PDF, please, Emily. So if you zoom out a little bit, yeah, there you go. So what you see is some shading. So the shading represents a right-of-way acquisition, and the fish spec use different colors to represent the different parcels that are impacted. So as you can see, we've got some significant acquisitions for this roundabout concept on the south leg of the intersection. And again, what we're trying to do is address the skew, design an intersection to accommodate the turning movements, and to allow for folks to slow down as they approach the intersection. So that southern leg is really impactful but necessary when we're looking at a long-term solution. So we've got 3 parcels that are impacted. We also have smaller impacts on the northwest corner and the northeast corner that will require some acquisition and grading permits. So what I'd like to do then is move on, and we can certainly go back to these during our discussion, but for the sake of the presentation, move on to the signal. So this is a concept that was developed just to give contrast and to look and evaluate what a traffic signal would look like. So this is a traffic signal option, and as you can see, again, what we're trying to do is address the skew, and in addressing the skew, the recommended minimum angle is 60 degrees. So that's what the consultant essentially designed for, is a 60-degree angle as it relates to the intersection of Pontiac Trail to North Territorial, which basically runs east and west. And in a signal design, we have to recognize that the speeds at which vehicles are traveling, the posted speed limits that I believe is 50 miles an hour. So not only are we going to increase the speeds at which people are traveling through the intersection, we have to accommodate that 50 miles an hour when we're designing curves to correct the skew. So what that does is takes our footprint even further. So we've even got a bigger impact when we're looking at right-of-way and environmental impacts as well, and I'll get into that a little bit. Emily, if you could go on to the next page that shows the right-of-way. So in the signal option, you're going to have dramatic right-of-way impacts, even more so than the roundabout options. It impacts numerous parcels, and I've got a summary at the end that we can show you. But also, I've talked about we're looking to solve a congestion issue, and the traffic signal can certainly solve congestion. We operate traffic signals throughout the county with good success. But the skew that still is present with even in this design, which is 60 degrees, it represents a safety concern. And by that, I mean speeds going through this intersection are going to be 50 miles an hour as opposed to a roundabout where speeds are a lot slower for circulating traffic and approach traffic. The skew presents a concern from a safety standpoint in that if we ever were to have someone run a red light and strike a vehicle on the other leg of the intersection, say folks traveling on North Territorial is struck by a Pontiac Trail southbound or northbound car that ran a red light, you would have a high risk for injury and fatality based on the angle of the collision. So that's another, I would say, negative to the signal option, that there would be a safety risk and concern if we went with a traffic signal. Emily, if we could go to the comparison. So obviously with the larger footprint, the traffic signal requires more road work to address the skew of the intersection and develop the curves at 50 miles an hour to address that. So the larger footprint ends up being more road work, ends up being more costs. So the estimated cost for construction for the roundabout is about 1.4 million, and the traffic signal is 1.8 million. So it's a higher cost. And then as it relates to parcels of right-of-way to acquire that are impacted, you've got about 7 parcels during the roundabout option and about 14 parcels in the traffic signal option. And we're looking at right-of-way acquisition area, and we put a number to that just as a base concept. It's square footage, and it's 81,000 square feet, 81,515 square feet for the roundabout, as opposed to a much larger acquisition area of 418,705 square feet, which involves, with the traffic signal, 3 total takes of a parcel. So by definition, the total take, it means we would acquire the entire parcel and whatever's on it. So that's another nuance that we don't often get into, total takes. A lot of times when we're doing intersection projects, we're just acquiring a piece of the land or an easement over the land of parcel that we're adjacent to. And so we've estimated right-of-way acquisition costs for both options as well, just using a round number of roughly $2 a square foot. And there may be additional costs that are baked in that would need to be dealt with when we're dealing with total takes. So that estimated right-of-way acquisition costs are very ballpark, but estimated right-of-way for the roundabout is $165,000. Estimated right-of-way for the traffic signal is quite significant at $825,000. And then a just summary of total costs. Roundabout options about 1.5, and the traffic signals at 2.6, rough numbers. And the reason why we're giving you these comparisons is just to kind of look at different solutions. The real big reason I wanted to advise the board of the status of this project is that the roundabout costs, construction costs, are higher than what we anticipated in dealing with the skew of the intersection. And it's more dollars that we need to program for the project. And given the right-of-way acquisition costs, those are also more significant than what we initially anticipated. So ultimately, what our recommendation is to...
Would you mind explaining that the construction costs, where the federal aid could be applied and what would be coming out of our pocket, so to speak?
Sure.
Match
Sure.
or some of the soft costs?
Yeah, so the estimated construction costs, generally speaking, are all eligible for federal dollars. But in any given year, we're using rural funds for this project because it's in the rural area on the federal aid system. We get about $1 million in rural money. So anything, and usually that's matched 80-20. So on a project basis, 80% of the project is funded with federal funds and 20% with local match. So that'd be our MTF dollars. And so we'd have to program the full amount of our rural and potentially add more MTF because we are only allocated about $1 million a year. And then the right-of-way acquisition costs are we do not use federal funds for right-of-way acquisition. That is all MTF dollars. So that would be all road commission costs for right-of-way acquisition, which is not uncommon. Certainly, we have had intersection projects that have had substantial right-of-way costs, such as this. One that certainly most recently comes to mind is the Miller and Wagner. There were significant right-of-way acquisitions. And a couple years ago, Baker Road roundabouts at Shield and Dan Hoy had also significant right-of-way acquisition costs. So it's not uncommon for a project to certainly have right-of-way acquisition costs when we're doing intersection improvements. Particularly for two primary roads coming together, there's always some realm of right-of-way, but in this case, we need to budget for that. And for those reasons, our recommendation is to move the project to another fiscal year, to 2022. What that does is allows us time to continue refining the design and really honing in on truly what are the impacts from a right-of-way standpoint. Right now, we're just looking at base plan concepts, so they're very preliminary. And we saw this as a checkpoint that we need to check in with our board and really review the costs, review the year at which we would like to program this intersection project, and then start budgeting appropriately for a future year rather than 2021. We'd rather like to move it to 2022. And what that means for our federal aid program is really taking those dollars that we had anticipated spending on 2021 on the roundabout and moving them into paving and resurfacing using preventative maintenance, mill and resurfacing new candidate roadways. So we are in the process of identifying roads in 2021, which we would use this money that was going to go to the roundabout project, but now our recommendation is to shift the roundabout project to a future year, 2022. So that's the bulk of my presentation. I'd like to open it up for discussion, questions on the project.
So Matt, it looks like the traffic signal option as presented is about 1.1 million more than the roundabout option, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around why are the right of acquisition costs higher for the traffic signal option than the roundabout option?
Sure. Emily, would you mind going back to the shaded concept for the traffic signal? So the traffic signal has a couple of things going against it. One of them is the safety component I explained, the higher speeds, the skew, the higher risk for fatality and injury. Okay. And then also it's got a much bigger footprint. So you can see the amount of parcels impacted from the shading. A lot more parcels impacted because, again, we're trying to address the skew of the intersection. And in doing so, we have to accommodate vehicles traveling 50 miles an hour. We have to design curves and geometry that can safely go with super elevation, kind of angling the cross section of the road and banking through those curves. We designed the geometry which creates a larger footprint. So Emily, could you shift to the roundabout shaded concept just so you can kind of get a sense? So that's much zoomed in, as you can see, whereas the signal option is zoomed out and affects many more parcels. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah, I mean, from a fiscal standpoint or viewpoint, it looks like the roundabout is just more fiscally responsible, as well as safety as well.
That's correct. And that's why we put these exhibits together just to kind of give you a comparison, because we get that question oftentimes from the general public. So when we go and do some public engagement, we want to show the public we've looked at these options, and we feel very strongly that the roundabout is the preferred option that we should proceed with.
So the skew is absolutely mandated or absolutely necessary in either way?
Yeah, we have to
Either
address the
option?
skew. Yeah, even in the roundabout concept, because if we kept it the way it is and we just put the circle back in the center of the existing intersection, trucks would have a difficult time making the turn to get from Pontiac Trail to North Territorial. And we want to design an intersection that long term, many years down the road, you're going to, on our primary system, we need to accommodate commercial vehicle traffic.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay.
I have a question.
And-
I have a question. Go ahead, Rod.
Well, I just wanted to ask, so I'm assuming that the commercial traffic on the intersection is quite significant.
It's not above our normal primary roads. It's not like a Carpenter in Pittsfield Township where you have a commercial corridor, but in the primary system, we definitely want to accommodate our design vehicle, which is a semi-truck and trailer.
Right.
Percentage-wise, it's probably less than 5% currently, but again, we have to think long-term. And certainly the South Line area to the north is growing, and certainly this is one of the access routes to the city of Ann Arbor and surrounding area, Pontiac Trail.
So I'm assuming that the roundabout will be able to accommodate an 18-wheeler?
Yes.
Okay. I'm done, Barb.
I have a question about the federal dollars. You said we would need to reallocate them for other projects in FY21. Are we not allowed to roll any of that forward to help defray the project cost in FY22?
No, we have allocations each year that we need to deliver the program for. And so it would require reassigning those fiscal year funds to other projects.
And there's no way to spend FY21 money towards the larger project to be completed in fiscal year 22?
The difficult task,
straddling the 2 years?
yeah, the difficult task for our county is with urban funds. I'll give you an example. Urban funds, we're able to potentially, if we need to save up, so to speak, for a larger scale project, we can horse trade or work with the city of Ann Arbor, who's another large partner with urban funds, and we can essentially, we'll give you our share for 2020, and we'll expect that share back in 2021 for a larger scale project, for instance. And that works fairly well and can be seen being done even in our current TIP with urban funds as they're trying to accomplish larger scale projects as well. The problem with rural funds is that we are the bulk recipient of all rural funds for Washington County. So there's no one to trade with.
And Barb,
Cheryl, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, Barb, there is a requirement that you have to spend all your federal dollars in the year that you receive them. And then, it's quite a process to have to go through in order to, the term is obligate the funds. You have to have final plans all ready to go to bid, and you have to have all your right-of-way acquisition done in order to secure those funds. If you have a bigger project that basically you want to use 2 years of your federal funds. What you really end up having to do is borrow against a future year as opposed to saving this year for the next year. So if we decide we wanted to put the minimal amount of match into this project, so now we need more than $1 million and that's all we have available, what we would really be doing is we would say this is a fiscal year 2022 project, and then we would borrow against fiscal year 23, 200,000 or whatever that amount might be, so that we, you know, we've minimized our amount of dollars that go into the project, but at that point in time, we've secured those dollars for fiscal year 2022, and we've done all the things we have to do. The final plans, the proposal, estimates have all been submitted, all of our permits are in hand, and all of our right-of-way has been acquired, and we can sign off that we have it under our control. So you still have to go through all of those hoops no matter what each and every year, or else you lose your money. That's just the way this particular federal program works, the surface transportation dollars. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it's a great question and a good point in that we could put more federal dollars, but we'd be borrowing against 2023. And that's an option. That's absolutely an option. But what that also does is basically we'd still be paying that with our MTF, but we'd be, once 2023 fiscal year happens, then we'd be paid back that amount that we borrowed. So that's definitely an option to look at.
Right, and which isn't normally as big a deal, especially if it's a smaller dollar amount, because the way the fiscal years run, it ends up sort of catching up in a timely manner. So we're not usually out of pocket money for very long, if we're even out of pocket at all.
So Cheryl, with the requirement that the federal funds be used that year, does the unused portion get sent back to the Fed?
The unused portion, normally they would try to keep it in the region. So if we had unused portion, they'd try to keep it first within the SEMCOG or your rural task force region. Then they would try to keep it within the state. But ultimately, as a state, if we don't collectively all spend the money, then yes, it goes back to the feds.
Have we ever left money on the table like that?
It's been a long time. I cannot remember leaving money on the table in recent years at all. We're normally the ones who get the phone call that says someone can't spend their money, can you do something? And that's where we've been very successful in past years, with especially with resurfacing, because our staff is pretty good about putting logs together on a very quick manner. So we've got a couple of candidates, we'll spend that money. So we're usually—
Yeah, we've got 5 or 6 candidates that certainly can use all of that money and more for fiscal year 2021. We're already kind of working towards that end, given that if we were to agree that Pontiac Trail is a worthy project and Pontiac Trail and North Territorial is a worthy project, we should start planning for 2022, we can definitely, we're prepared to program 2021 funds with preventative maintenance resurfacing on several of our rural primary road segments that could use it.
Could we hear from Dan about his perspective on all this prestidigitation with dollars, please?
Well, I did have a question, Matt. If we pushed into 2022, then the right-of-way we'd need to budget in 2021. Is that correct?
Not necessarily. We could also, again, the word obligate. So these funds need to be obligated in 2022.
Okay.
So we could even obligate the funds, bid it in 2022, with the construction actually taking place in 2023. So that's another tool in the toolbox where I think, given the state of things and our concerns about being fiscally responsible, not knowing what the future holds in the short term, I think buying time for this very important project is an important strategy.
And do we already have a preventative maintenance program for 2021? So the $1 million would just be added on to that? Or was there nothing planned for preventative for federal dollars?
No, we have a significant program for both urban dollars and rural that could be added to the program for preventative maintenance.
So we would just expand the existing program we're already planning on then?
Correct.
Okay.
And again, a lot of the preventative maintenance projects don't have significant costs related to right-of-way because it's just resurfacing an existing roadway.
Sure. And I kind of like what Matt said about, you know, there are some uncertainties in particular in 2021. So if this pushes things out a little bit, I think we'll have a better handle on things, and you know, we'll kind of know where we stand with the Michigan Transportation Funds.
What other Go ahead, Cheryl.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say the intent would be to continue to refine the design, so we really had a better handle on what those right-of-way implications would be. And exactly to your point, now we start to say, okay, can we truly afford? Because it's still going to be a pretty big hit to our MTF to do the right-of-way acquisition for this project. So that allows us also time to see how quickly we recover from this pandemic situation and what that's doing to our MTF and any of our other funding sources that are out there, and knowing that there's going to be budget hits all over the place with respect to this situation and then the economic outfall of this situation. So it really does allow us a better picture, to get a better picture of our budget as we start to make these decisions moving forward.
And we can refine the design as Cheryl indicated, and then also perform appraisals on the acquisition areas to get a sense as, all right, what are we talking a good faith offer would be for these acquisition areas?
What other projects is this one competing with? I mean, this is a significant investment from our side, right?
Sure. Yeah, and it was one that was programmed for 21.
Yes.
So it's not necessarily competing for anything. We'd just be deferring it. And the year that we were deferring it to was set up for preventative maintenance projects. So in essence, we're just flipping it a year. So no road per se is losing an opportunity. We're just moving the preventative maintenance that was programmed for 22 up to 21 and then moving the roundabout down.
Understood.
Right. Again, like Matt indicated, we receive the lion's share of the rural dollars within Washtenaw County, within our area. The Village of Manchester occasionally has a project they're eligible for rural funds. There's a little bit of transit that may occasionally get some dollars, but for the most part, we get the vast majority of these funds. So we're not really competing. These become internal decisions for us. If there was another intersection that we might want to improve or other roads that we wanted to do with resurfacing types of eligible work, those are all within our decisions to be made. Now, it's a very long process if we completely change direction that we would have to go through for programming and getting it into the tip and all of those types of things. So I don't say that without understanding that there's a long process associated with that. But as far as competing or project selection, that is for the most part within our control.
And these dollars couldn't be used if a bridge collapses or if culverts collapse, right?
Bridges and culverts potentially would be eligible work. It would be that we would have to revise or add those projects in and then move this project either to yet a state or out of the program altogether. But that's a long process going through SEMCOG where we would have to come to the table with a new, basically a new project and get it into the tip. And that's we can't do that nimbly. That requires some planning.
Yeah, oftentimes you're looking at 6 to 9 months to just get it in the tip. And if we're talking a collapsed culvert, using your example, we need to address that much quickly, and we have to use MTF dollars rather than looking at federal funds.
Okay.
Given that the traffic signal option is, the cost is significantly higher than the roundabout option, does that necessarily mean that that money takes a bigger bite out of rural funds?
Yeah, the traffic signal we'd have to look at either putting more MTF dollars into or doing the advanced construct and borrowing from a future federal year.
So that
But
takes
again,
away from other projects.
It would. And again, I caution the traffic signal option is not a safe, you're putting more risk that actually exists there today.
Really?
Yes, by installing a traffic signal, because of the skew and the higher speeds, there's a higher degree of risk if there's a red light that's run for a fatality and injury accident. Currently, the existing intersection, again, is stop controlled. Everyone's slowing down and coming to a complete stop. Very safe intersection, but very congested. So in solving a congestion problem, I don't want to put a solution out there that inherently has safety concerns.
Absolutely.
Any more questions for Matt with respect to, or Dan, or any of us with respect to sort of where we're at? We just wanted to bring you up to speed with what staff is thinking. This is a project that we get pretty regular questions about. So as we start to push it back, we wanted you to understand sort of the reasoning of why it wouldn't be a 2021 project any longer.
Will this recommendation come back to us at our meeting on the 19th?
We don't need you to take any formal action on this at this point in time. I guess the decisions would come up as we would be preparing our budgets. So potentially we would be talking about it in July as we're looking at our 2021 budget. Unless there's more information that you want or any further questions that you'd like staff to look into.
I'm just thinking of timing.
Yeah, what we would be doing is essentially working with Watts and SEMCOG to adjust our program for 2021. So we are going to identify the candidates and essentially amend the TIP to move the project to 2022 and to identify those road segments that we're going to use the preventative maintenance funds on. So that's what staff will be doing, and eventually that will materialize into MDOT agreements that the board would need to approve, plans that the board would approve, and certainly I can let you know what the road segments are when we go through and our budget in July for second quarter and looking ahead for 2021 and 2022.
So remind me what it is we've already approved then. If no further action is taken, what did we originally approve?
You approved the preliminary engineering purchase requisition for Fishbeck to begin work on this project. That's what's been approved because the project is in the TIP.
Got it.
And
okay.
Our commission has a representative at Watts that approves TIP amendments at policy and then sends it along to SEMCOG. So that's kind of our role in the planning process using federal funds.
Thank you.
Yes, no problem. Doug, you had your hand up at one point. Did you have a question? Did we address it?
I didn't recall having had my hand up.
Oh, okay. I thought I saw it. Sorry.
The only observation I would make is you touched on briefly, and that's fine, which is the increase in traffic congestion in that corridor. You specifically mentioned the growth in South Lyon, which is an absolute reality. And who knows what it is that's going to happen in Northfield Township or Salem Township or anything else. But certainly we know that the amount of traffic being generated from new home construction, even as it exists now, even if all future construction stopped as a result of this pandemic, if all future construction stopped in Lyon Township, we already have an increase in traffic of something like 20% along the Pontiac Trail corridor. I don't know exactly where that's going to wind up at in 10 more years, but we absolutely have to take a long-term, as you have emphasized several different times, look at the potential congestion in that corridor. Certainly the roundabout approach is the way forward as far as Doug is concerned. Traffic signal for a whole variety of reasons doesn't help the congestion. Delaying the project a year while we refine our engineering. It also allows us to gently feel our way forward for right-of-way acquisition, and you brought that out. So I'm all in favor of the roundabout concept, and delaying it for a year has nothing but benefits to the commission as far as I can see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Matt, given that you plan to push this back a year, how soon would existing landowners or people who are impacted by this be notified or have an opportunity to provide input?
Kurt Brochet, our right-of-way specialist, he's already been in contact with a few of the property owners. During the design process, we're absolutely going to get outreach to each one of the property owners impacted. We'll start those conversations, and certainly whenever we have surveyors out on site, we tend to get those phone calls from the property owners right away. So we've talked to a number of all, if not all, those property owners.
Okay.
So during the design process, we'll continue that. Also during the design process, we'll be following our public engagement policy as well. So we like to have a meeting and let the public know where we stand in that design process. And part of that, we like to make sure that all the property owners are aware of the project and know their impacts to their property prior to that meeting. So that will definitely continue to happen as we refine the design.
Thank you.
And certainly we'll be making known our plan to the township, letting them know that it's still a viable project and it's going to be essentially moved to a different fiscal year.
Okay.
Observation at that point, Matt, is because of that intersection's location, that is really of vital interest to Ann Arbor Township and Salem Township and Northfield Township for 3. So
Yeah.
we need to make, and this also, moving this project back a year allows for a whole bunch of refinements and much more information gathering as we go along, not least of which we'll know more in another year what the impact on the 7 Mile and Pontiac Trail roundabout has on this intersection, which is, a mile north, so to speak. So there's nothing but good that could come out of delaying this project. Largely, in my own mind, for the reasons I just illuminated, and secondarily, and not necessarily in that order, but it allows us to gaze further into the crystal ball as to what impact COVID-19 is going to have on MTF funding, which I still think is probably somewhat underestimated at the moment, but that's my own personal belief. So I'm all in favor of taking the suggestion of the staff to move this project back 1 year or forward 1 year, however you want to delay it for 1 year.
Yes.
Commissioners, are we ready to move on, or do we have more questions?
Ready to move on.
Ready to
I
move
really
on?
appreciate the conversation. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you as well. Cheryl, back to you.
All right, next up on our agenda is the item of IT needs for road commissioners. This is something that we have talked sort of sporadically about for the last, I don't know, year or so. Starting to sort of get a little bit more refined as we started talking about some of the live streaming options we were exploring, decisions to be made, moving along those lines. And then COVID-19 hit, and all of a sudden it became some sort of instant decision making that we had to do with respect to virtual meetings, Zoom, just a whole brave new world of trying to figure out how to best conduct business and continue to do so, obviously in an open and transparent manner, meeting the Open Meetings Act, and all of that. And similar to the challenges that we've had with our entire staff, we've figured out how to work remotely and the different technology that's there. And we've had a few humps and bumps along the way, and Chris Quinter has helped us certainly through all of that and getting staff up and running. But we also need to make sure that we have our road commissioners equally able to do business, whether it's continuing in this manner for a while. We don't know exactly what the future brings. The current executive order does expire here shortly, and we'll need to understand when and how we continue to do virtual meetings versus moving back to more traditional methods. But we've also learned that over time, technology is critical to how we do business. It isn't really a luxury. It isn't sort of the fun little budgetary stuff. It's essential to how we do business. And that's one of the things that we have found is we've tried to set up these virtual meetings. And it's also played out not just on holding the meetings, but also how we are doing business, the need to sign documents. MDOT now sends us documents and they expect digital signatures on everything. And they have a very specific format that they're looking for with respect to signatures. And we need to make sure that our commissioners have the ability to conduct business in the manner that we need them to do so. So as we started sort of asking ourselves those questions and again, sort of moving through out of necessity, we thought it was an appropriate time to take a step back and say, what are the appropriate tools for our commissioners to have in order to conduct the very important business that we need you to do? So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dan. I had asked for he to work with Chris and sort of explore what options we had that were available. So Dan, are you ready to take over?
Sure. Emily's already pulling up the PowerPoint presentations. Definitely learning from Emily. It's a great way to communicate in this environment. And I would ask Chris if there's anything that I overlooked to feel free to chime in as well. So if we can go to the first slide. So currently, right now, obviously the commissioners are using whatever devices that you have. It could be an iPhone, could be an Android phone, it could be a flip phone. Really, there's no standardization. So obviously it makes it difficult for IT, for the road commission's IT to support that. Another example is with laptops. You're using laptops, desktops. It could be 2 months old or 10 years old. And right now we can't remote into your laptops. And I recall a Zoom meeting that there were some technical difficulties, and really IT could do nothing to help the commissioners. For instance, right now, if I was having an issue, I could get a hold of Chris and he could get onto my laptop and maybe help resolve things right on the fly. So, again, the way we're conducting business now, I think it's imperative that we can do all we can to support not only staff, but the commissioners. And as it says here, older devices are becoming incompatible with new software infrastructure, speed-wise, storage-wise. Some of the older devices may not be able to handle some of the tools that we need to utilize now to conduct business. Next slide, please. And really, just taking a step back, as Cheryl mentioned, I always try and find the good out of any situation. Certainly in 2008, we had a lot of economic challenges, but one positive I saw was more of a focus on the budget internally, which is a good thing, and I think is carried to this day. Similarly, with what's going on with the pandemic, we're kind of being forced out of our comfort zone. In the last couple of years, we've brought so much technology to the Road Commission that it's really being utilized, which is great. And I see, the way of conducting business changing going forward. As Cheryl mentioned, maybe Zoom is something we can use to tape our board meetings in the future, and that would involve the need of everybody to have a laptop so we can project your image and then record everything. So keep that in mind as well. It's staff's belief that personal devices that are currently being used for Road Commission business would be subject to FOIA. So certainly that's not something you would necessarily want with any of your personal devices. Obviously, if it was Road Commission equipment, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. So you could kind of separate, the personal from the professional. And as I mentioned, we're more dependent on technology. So I don't see that trend changing. It seems like every day we're more and more dependent on technology. So really, it seems that, certainly our employees, but also our commissioners need those tools in order to be able to conduct business and do things on behalf of the Road Commission. Next slide, Emily, please.
To ask a question?
Yes.
Does that mean that personal devices could be subject to subpoena and taken?
Well, certainly, if there's a FOIA request for all of your communications involving the Road Commission, I think that that's something that we would have to consider. Would we have to provide that or at least get the information from it? So I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay.
Obviously you're a commissioner for the agency, and if you're accessing your Road Commission email and so on, and somebody wants to see those communications, I'm not sure if there's anything we can do to refute that.
That's a reason by itself to kind of segregate the two.
Exactly. So what we're proposing is each commissioner would receive a cell phone and a laptop. There are several staff members that do receive a cell phone. We're moving towards laptops, definitely for everybody in the office. And what we would ask is that the Road Commission or the commissioners would be subjected to the IT use policy, which is something that I would be more than happy to provide to the commissioners after we talk today, just so you have an opportunity to review it. And it's more, things that you can do and can't do with the Road Commission technology. And that equipment would be property of the Road Commission. So the Road Commission would own it. It would just be, we would be providing it to the commissioners for your use in order to conduct business. So as we provide this technology to the commissioners, we would provide training by Chris, similar to training that's provided to our employees. And that would include things like how to sign documents electronically, how to access Zoom meetings. We've been using Microsoft Teams quite a bit internally, so we would basically go over anything that we feel the commissioners would need in order to conduct business, as well as answer any questions. And since it is Road Commission proprietary equipment, you would be fully supported by our IT department. So again, you're using standardized equipment that we're already familiar with, that is easier for us to support. There is a bit of a concern on our end, in particular with laptops, trying to support personal laptops. What happens if we were to do something to cause your personal laptop to no longer function? We want to get away from those things. Obviously, if we're supporting you and it's road commission equipment, then we feel a little bit differently about it.
Can you please
So
address why you're including a cell phone in this conversation?
Again, similarly to the laptop, if you're using your personal cell phone, we are concerned that it's subjected to FOIA, number one. Number two, there's no standardization. So we have been asked to support cell phones in the past for commissioners. And it's very difficult because, again, you could have an iPhone and we may not be familiar with it. Or it could be a cell phone that is 5 to 10 years old, and really those things become obsolete, and you almost can't support those type of things. So therefore, if you have what everybody else has, it's much easier for us to be able to support you.
And I'd just like to add, I know for a fact that cell phone records can be taken. A lot of personal information can be taken.
Right.
Yeah, that I know for sure.
So that way we're trying to separate things with your role as a commissioner as opposed to your personal use. And that way the road commission cell phone would just be primarily for business use, and obviously you would know that. We can support you, and then you don't need to worry about, is my personal phone subjected to FOIA? I need to be careful what I'm saying or doing with it. So, a good separation of the two, I think, is in your best interest, and really the agency as well. Okay, next slide. So what are the costs to the agencies? The startup cost would be about $2,000 per commissioner, and that includes the purchase of a laptop as well as the cell phone. At one point in time, and I'm not sure exactly how we work this, but we were getting free upgrades with our cell phones. It's our understanding that Verizon is no longer continuing that plan. So we would need to make that initial investment in the laptop and the cell phone. Again, this would be road commission property that we would extending use to the commissioners. And then on an annual basis, it would be about $885 per commissioner. And I don't take it lightly, any sort of cost to the agency, but there's a cost versus benefit. And again, from a support standpoint, from a standardization standpoint, there are a lot of reasons why it makes sense to me. And this would be a good use of our funds in order to bring the commissioners kind of more in line with what the agency has. And again, just from a support standpoint as well.
I understand the startup cost, but why are the annual costs so high?
Well, you have a monthly fee for the cell phone, which is about $50. Again, the initial cost is $260. We are trying to purchase cell phones. We used to receive new cell phones every year, which I went back and forth with, but they were free. Again, there is a cost to it. And we're trying to do about a 2-year cycle with the cell phones because, again, they can become obsolete and more difficult to support and incompatible with some of the things that we want to use. So that would be about every 2 years. So Rod, primarily you have your monthly Verizon service fee. And then also we would get you a subscription to Office 365, which is about $240. And that includes Microsoft Teams and some of the online tools that we're utilizing in order to allow the commissioners to be able to conduct business. There is an optional cost, the Adobe Acrobat. That is something where if you receive PDFs and you want to make some edits to that, that would be $45 a year. But if that's something the commissioners didn't need, then we could just get you Adobe Acrobat Reader, which I believe is free. So that is a cost that we could avoid. And then as far as the laptop, you would be provided with a standard issued laptop. Some of our folks, primarily in the engineering department, have a more enhanced laptop, but certainly we wouldn't feel the commissioners would need that. And so you'd have a standard issue that a majority of the folks in the office receive, which is about $1,500. And we've been trying to replacement cycle for that. We've been receiving purchasing warranties for those, so all of the parts and services covered. And again, computers become obsolete almost when you receive them, so we want to make sure that we are keeping up with the technology, and that any other tools or resources that come our way, that we can handle all that. So I don't know if there's any other questions, but it's something I struggled with for a while. But talking to Christian and Cheryl about this, it seems like it's needed, it's warranted. Look how many Zoom meetings we've been participating in right now, and again, I don't see that trend not continuing. So it really seems like it's something that we want to provide to the commissioners. And I like the fact that we would ask that you'd be subjected to the IT use policy, so we're treating everyone consistently, the commissioners as well as the employees. And I also like the training that we can provide all of you to hopefully be able to do your jobs more efficiently. And from my standpoint, I kind of came around, and yes, it kind of does make sense that we consider this.
What's your recommended timeline for implementation?
Well, I think we'll need to talk about, there are 2 other commissioners that it's my understanding will be joining us. And I think it would be something that if we can swing it, maybe have everything ready to go prior to them starting, and we can purchase everything and provide the training to you, assuming we can make those acquisitions in time.
It's my understanding that the Board of Commissioners intends to make those appointments on the 20th of this month.
Right.
So the answer is as soon as possible.
Right.
I would concur. If we're going to do this, the time to do it is now, and to get it rolling.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think it's needed. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
I hate to see personal property being subpoenaed. I've seen that happen.
I just think this puts everybody in a good spot. Like you said, these are not perks any longer. This really has become tools for us to be able to conduct business. And frankly, from a staff standpoint, we really need our commissioners to have these tools available to you. We need you to be able to access these meetings without issue, so we're not losing commissioners. We don't have to worry about votes and things going wrong, and knowing that we have our IT there to support you if we've got control or the ability to remote in. We really need you to be able to conduct those meetings and conduct business as necessary. And I know we are struggling with some of the DocuSign, which is the software that we're using for signatures. We're asking you to put that on your personal device at this point in time, and that made us as staff very uncomfortable. We'd much prefer to have it onto a device that we can handle, and again, if there's issues, we can provide support to it. And I think it keeps a nice separation. It keeps it nice and clean for everybody with respect to road commission business versus your personal business.
And I don't think this is anything that would be unique to our agency. I believe there are many organizations that do provide this to their commissioners in order to be able to conduct business. So I don't see this as anything that would be unique to us if we were to do this.
What do you need from us to implement this?
I think just make sure there's no real concerns or questions about it. And Cheryl, sorry, you're going to say something?
Oh, go ahead, Dan. You're doing the same thing I did.
Yeah. I don't think there's a resolution or anything that needs to be passed or anything. It just, make sure that there's a good comfort level from our commissioners on this. And certainly, the IT use policy is something that we would ask that you would sign. So we want to make sure that you're comfortable with that as well.
I could see this as a broad integration of this technology with the onboarding of the 2 commissioners that will be joining us, so we all learn at the same time, hear the same messages. I think it's a wonderful recommendation, and I encourage you to move quickly on it.
Okay.
I think the
If we have
timing
the
is
ability-
perfect.
That was the intent. If we have the ability to get this equipment in time, then we would like to be able to do it for 5 people at one time. That frankly is the easiest for staff, keeps everybody on the same page, questions, you know, all of those types of things. So that is right now the goal.
And Barb, you hit the nail on the head. That would be then part of the onboarding process for any new commissioner would be we would provide the technology, we would provide some training and answer any questions. And I think that would be a great way to just, have somebody start their role here.
Yeah, the social distancing will present its own challenges in executing this plan, but I'm sure we'll work around it.
That's right.
Okay,
were there
concurrence? Dan, I think you have that clear. Cheryl, would you like to move on at this point?
Sure. The next thing up on the agenda is miscellaneous discussion items. And really, I guess 2 things. One, we've mentioned briefly the fact that it is my understanding as well that the county board will be appointing 2 new road commissioners at their May 21st meeting or 20th meeting. So we should have 2 new people joining us here shortly. And Emily has been assisting me in starting to put together onboarding packets. So just so you know, we're already giving that some thought so that we help bring them on and educate them as to who we are and all the various things that we've been going through. My thought is that I'll actually be compiling all of that information and really putting 5 packets together, so to speak, so that the 3 of you, although I know you are well versed in much of what we do, have the opportunity to see the same information in the same format that we'll be providing to our 2 new commissioners as well. So those efforts are ongoing right now. The other thing that I just wanted to share is the fact that back in April, the county board did approve the ballot language for renew and restoration on the road and non-motorized millage. So we've had several discussions primarily with county parks and then also a representative from the Huron-Waterloo Path Initiative as well on what that educational effort will look like on behalf of the road commission. And then in addition, how that would work and fold into the advocacy portion of this, understanding that with the August 4th election, primary election, that absentee ballots will be going out, I believe it's somewhere around June 20th. So certainly that's a pretty expedited schedule of trying to get that information out that we have available from an educational standpoint. And again, the advocacy effort that will be taking place. Emily is meeting, I believe tomorrow, with some of the communication folks with county parks as well as, again, HWPI to sort of coordinate those communication efforts that we have. We're also looking at holding an informational meeting for local elected officials. Right now, we're tentatively looking at next Thursday. That would be May 14th. To at least inform our local elected officials as to the fact that renewal and restoration is on the August 4th ballot and the various types of information that might be available for them should they desire to share it with their residents, and at a minimum at least connecting to our website and the different information that we will have available with respect to what that plan would look like, what the millage would look like, the costs associated for that sort of the average person within Washtenaw County, those types of things. That's what we're already starting to work on. But it's going to be pretty fast and furious here for the next couple of months on that. So I don't know if you have any questions with respect to any of that.
Is the informational meeting a virtual meeting?
It will be a virtual meeting, that is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Similar to the one that we have right now, or we've held We held a construction informational meeting. All the days are all running together. I believe it was last week or perhaps the week before with respect to Carpenter Road. So it's actually been a really nice tool, again, similar to the format that you have right here, where we have somebody who's available to present information, and then there's the opportunity to raise your hand virtually, and we'll certainly answer any questions that we have from the public at that point in time, or from, you know, and obviously the public being the local elected officials as well.
What time is that May 14th session scheduled for?
We have not firmly said it, but we were looking at around 11 o'clock, thinking that that might be a nice opportunity for knowing that so many people are working from home, but it sort of also starts to partner up against lunch period where people might feel comfortable taking a break, doing something that's a little more personal. A lot of our local elected officials obviously have other jobs, so they're trying to balance those two roles as well. So we thought that might be a good time for them to be able to, you know, step away potentially from their whatever their job might be and be able to do something a little bit more personal or wearing their other hat.
Will we be allowed to join that meeting?
Pardon?
Will we be allowed to join that meeting?
Oh, absolutely. It'll be open to the public, but we'll send out invitations as when we get it firmed up. Certainly, we'll invite all of you.
Thank you.
We'll also look at general public meetings as well. We've talked about holding 2 of those, one in June, one in July. But this initial one is really going to be aimed at the local elected officials. It'll be similar to the meetings that we held last fall, sort of a very brief overview of how we arrived at the plan, you know, what the plan itself is, how the millage itself works, really aimed at local elected officials from their standpoint. Then when we hold the general public meetings in June and July, those will be a little broader in nature.
Cheryl and my fellow commissioners, as an item of interest, just because it came in the mail yesterday, Scioto Township is telling me that the ballots for the August 4th election will be in the mail during the week of June the 27th from Scioto Township.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, by law, they have to be available to the clerks on June 20th. So it sounds like Scioto's giving themselves a week to get them
In the mail.
prepared and mailed.
And obviously today is also an election day, so we'll see if there's any changes that come into play for the August election based on anything that they find today and how things sort of continue with the pandemic, and if there's going to be any adjustments to the August 4th election as well.
We're all going to be voting by mail or by telephone or something, I'm sure, before this is over. Do we have any more discussion items, Cheryl?
That is what I had. I will open it up if staff had anything that they wanted to share at this time.
I'll just say that Cheryl mentioned the virtual construction information meeting. We did get feedback from the public that they really enjoyed the opportunity to join virtually, and that they would ask that we consider making that an option for all future, even after we can get back together. So just know that that's out there as well.
Thank you. That was one of my questions. I did not, unfortunately, make time to join the Carpenter Road meeting. How many people actually did get involved in that conversation? Any idea?
Emily, did you have a number on that? I don't recall, but there were several folks that attended.
We had 22 total participants, I think, for that one, Doug. And there was a number of staff on there, but there were also a number of public. I don't know the exact breakdown of staff versus public or officials, but it was a good turnout. And we have another one scheduled for Textile and Woodland next Tuesday on the 12th. And in those meetings, the format has been a brief presentation by the project manager. And then as Cheryl referenced, we open it up to question and answers using the raise your hand feature like we've been doing in these meetings.
Is it possible to use our message boards in the vicinities of the particular projects to announce the virtual meetings?
We did that with Carpenter Road. And we also, I made calls on Carpenter Road to all the businesses. For Textile
Right.
and Woodland, we sent letters to all of the area, or like the residents in the area and businesses. And then I'm sure that we can use the digital message boards again as we get a little closer to that. I'm working with the project managers this week to sort out our presentation and sort out those details.
Excellent.
Are we using Zoom?
Yes, yep. So any of those public meetings, we're using Zoom
Good.
because it has those moderation features that Teams does not have. Plus, you can see lots of videos as opposed to
Right.
just a couple.
Right.
I've heard from a number of other people about other venues that they're trying to use. And so far, Zoom certainly seems to be by far the best of the alternatives out there. So,
I know that Emily did quite a bit of looking into the different tools prior to going to this format. It seems to be a common format, which a lot of people, a lot of entities have landed with. So I think there's a certain familiarity at this point now with the public with Zoom. One of the concerns obviously continues to be the whole Zoom bombing, which is part of why we have some of the protocols in place that we do in trying to manage it in the way that we have been. But certainly if there become other tools that make more sense for us as an organization, we'll continue to explore those as well. But right now, Zoom is certainly meeting our needs.
I want to say Google is trying to enter the market, and they have a product that they're trying to prop up to compete. So that'll be interesting to see how that would compare to Zoom.
yep. Well, if that,
So if I may,
Includes
Doug, the
our-
only other thing before we move on, I did notice that we do have Commissioner Schink has joined us. I don't know if you'd like to recognize her at this point.
good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning, everyone. I've been having technology problems today, so I felt a little bit like I was eavesdropping as opposed to participating. But I learned a lot about the roundabout at Pontiac Trail in North Territorial. That's in my district as well as my township, so I appreciate understanding what's happening and why, and I don't have anything to add. We will be talking about the new commissioners shortly in terms of trying to figure out who should join you, and so I'm looking forward to that. And I appreciate all the efforts to make the meetings available to the public. Even though I'm having technology problems, it still is nice to be able to participate from my basement.
I have a
So
question.
thanks. I hope you're all doing well.
I have a question for the commissioner. The deliberations about the additional commissioners, when will those take place, and are those public meetings?
So I guess my answer is I'm not positive. I believe that in terms of leadership, which is just 4 of us sub quorum, that we'll be talking about the different people. If you have input, certainly we're interested in it. I don't, they won't be appointed, and we won't have a full board deliberation without it being public. At the same time, it's the chair's right to propose, and the board gets to approve or vote against the person. So that's not exactly answering your question, it's just telling you the best I know.
So the assumption is, Commissioner, that will happen on May 20th?
That's my understanding as well.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner. Cheryl, are we ready to move on here?
I believe we are.
Okay. I'm looking for a motion to move into a executive session for the purpose of deliberating about a proposed right-of-way acquisition. Could I have such a motion, please?
So moved.
Support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. We have to have a roll call vote. Commissioner Fuller, as in Douglas Fuller, votes aye. Commissioner Barb Fuller,
Aye.
Commissioner Rod Green.
Aye.
Thank you. We are in private session. And session back in the working session. And at this point, it appears to me that we have exhausted the agenda of that working session. If there's anything else that any commissioner would like to bring up, this would be the opportunity.
I have nothing.
I have nothing.
Excellent. How about a motion to adjourn to close the working session? Excuse me.
Mr. Chairman, I move adjournment of the working session.
Support.
Thank you. Again, a roll call vote. Commissioner Barb Fuller,
Aye.
Commissioner Rod Green,
Aye.
Commissioner Doug Fuller votes aye as well. We are adjourned.
See you at 1 o'clock.
Thank you all.
Thank you.